also need in colder climates, you need a special ice maker called a lower ambient, which allows you to make ice at lower temperatures. And because of that, obviously that adds on to the cost. And so it's kind of a snowball effect that you always start and look at the numbers. Like buying a car with all its features, by the time you're done, you usually just want to pay the money up front and have the nicer features. Yeah. And so we did that with our machines. So we decided that it was going to be a one-time investment and that we were going to make the biggest, best machine out there.
Welcome to the Plan B CRNA podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Jones, and I'm so excited that you're here. The Plan B CRNA podcast is the only show made specifically for nurse anesthetists who are exploring options outside of their traditional career paths. This is the place to expand your mind and your goals as we uncover new ways to produce side income together. Join me for some honest, unscripted discussions with other CRNAs who are transforming their financial lives. This episode is brought to you by On-Call Capital. On-Call Capital is dedicated to educating CRNAs and other healthcare providers about investing outside of the traditional stock market. On-Call Capital also provides opportunities for you, yes, you, to create passive income and generational wealth while also lowering your taxable income through investments in the apartment and alternative investment spaces. If you haven't hit subscribe yet, make sure you do that right now so that you don't miss an episode. Thanks so much for joining me today. And now, on with the show. Welcome to another Provider Spotlight episode of the Plan B CRNA podcast. My guest today has taken a decidedly cooler approach to her Plan B than I have. Courtney Beck has been a CRNA since 2009, living in Chicago until around 5 years ago. Then she decided to move to Colorado Springs and started working as a traveling locum. Around that time, too, she started actually looking into standalone ice machines, eventually purchasing one with her husband. Now she has two of them, and she's still looking to expand. And I can't wait to get into this episode and kind of get in the nitty gritty here. But thank you so much for being here today, Courtney.
It's my pleasure.
So, you researched this idea for a little while before ultimately taking the leap. How did you even come across the concept in the first place?
So Jeff and I were driving down the street and we saw a machine. I Googled it because I didn't know really what we were looking at. We used to stop, walk around it, and we thought it was an interesting concept. And then we reached out to the parent company because at the time they were a franchise. We're now all independently owned machines, but at the time they were a franchise and we had reached out. Jeff's a veteran and they were a veteran-friendly franchise that you buy in. And so we started to talk with the sales guy. And he connected us with other owners who owned machines. So we got to speak with other owners about their experience with the machines. And it took us about a year to come up with the idea that we really wanted to buy a machine and to proceed with the concept.
So, and this was while you were in Colorado Springs. Were you, thinking of areas like right around you? Is that the general idea for you?
Yeah. So everyone told us location, mm-hmm. On where you place the machine. We tried for one small town on the way to Jeff's cabin, and we found it really challenging to work with local governments. The larger the government, the more challenging they are to work with on placement of the machine, especially if a town has never had one of these machines before, because you're really introducing a new concept to them. And that's what the challenge is. Both to the city engineers and the planners and all these people you have to learn to work with. And so we felt we were going to be unsuccessful in that town. And so we transferred our idea to put another machine in an even smaller town, which was our first town and our first machine in a town called Silver Cliff, Colorado, which is right next to West Cliff, Colorado, in Custer County. And both towns have about a population of 1,200 year-round, and the county has maybe 6,000 people year-round. So it's a super small town.
Yeah.
But that town, you did business by attending a meeting and a handshake, and the local government basically said, sure, no problem. We'll figure out the details later after you put the machine in. And so there was land available, and you really have to go with your gut instinct on this. the parent company ran demographics on us, and they have certain factors that they feel leads to successful placement of a machine. But some of the demographics were distance to body of water. And we're in the mountains of Colorado, and therefore we scored very poorly on that. Mm-hmm. But we still felt we'd be successful. So there's distance to high school, and there's all these metrics that they like to keep. Median family incomes in the area. And so they help you with that. But again, we scored poorly on so many metrics, but we still felt that we would be successful. So we pushed ahead with it.
That's really neat. And, I think I just don't understand enough about the ice machine market in general. Like I just don't know much about it. Like how many machines are out there and what does the competition look like? Because you mentioned a parent company and then, but there are, separate owners. And so what does that competition look like?
So there's a bunch of different ice machines on the market and people have a choice of which one to buy. We chose to go with the gold standard, just the Cadillac and Mercedes version of ice machines, which is a parent company called Ice House America out of Jacksonville, Florida. And the machines are made in Moultrie, Georgia. So they are made in the USA. Their parts are sourced, made, and shipped out to their destination. So that's where you become independently owned, because even if I choose not to link to the parent company or change the name of our machine, I still own that machine. I'm responsible for it, but I still own that machine. So that was one of, when they were a franchise, that was one of the things that, softened the blow, is that at least I would be owning this machine no matter what. Ice is actually a $4 billion industry in the US.
Holy smokes.
$4 billion, and that's probably old figures even. Ice is a very American thing. Mm-hmm. You travel to foreign countries, they give you 1 or 2 cubes of ice in your glass. But Americans love ice. We love ice everywhere. So it is a large business in the US. And what we found out as we kind of dove deeper into the business of ice is only about 20% of the ice that the people use in the US are made by large manufacturers. You're talking about Ready Ice, AC Ice, whatever, Home City Ice, whatever is your local distribution. Most towns have 1 to 2 large ice manufacturers. And only 20% of the ice is made by them in the country. You're still talking another 70% of ice is actually made in the back of a convenience store. It is bagged and then brought up front and placed into the ice chests.
Interesting.
Yeah, think about how sanitary that is.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I never knew that. Yeah.
I don't want to creep people out. That is true. Huh. And then about 10% to 15% of the market share probably now are these ice machines. They're very popular in the Southeast. They're all along the coasts. You see them a lot in Texas and a lot in rural towns. That's where you're seeing them. A few years ago, the CEO of the company tried to make a push across the Mississippi and sort of in places where people wouldn't think that ice would be sold, sort of like in cold Colorado. Everyone says to us, why? We are a seasonal business. Our business is seasonally from April to October. We tend to taper. But the machine also sells water, reverse osmosis, very pure, filtered, purified water. And that water sales keeps us going year round. So even though our ice business dips off, you're able to sustain yourself with water sales.
That's really cool.
So that's what sold us on it. And there's now a machine. People thought we were crazy when we put our one at 8,000 feet in Colorado. They're like, you're not going to shut it down. And I said, nope, we're going to run it all winter. Negative 12 degrees. We are still running this machine. Mm-hmm. And people come out. So it has been a really fascinating business when you dive in. That ice is that big. They say the average American buys 4 bags of ice a year annually.
Huh. That's interesting. You think about coastal areas in particular, that they're fishing and, you got to keep things on ice and, or even hunting. You think about in Colorado during hunting season, like you got to have some ice to, put the meat on.
You do. So. You do. And what we found is, like our small town, the large manufacturers did not want to deliver up to the small town. They felt an obligation to do so, but they didn't want to. So by placing our machine in a small rural town, we really gave the town a lot of self-sufficiency. So if you could make it, deliver it, package it on site to people, they really appreciate that, the town people who live in the town and who live in the county and the people who visit. So our businesses appreciate it, our events appreciate it. And so we really enjoy being part of a business, but more so a business that is part of the community.
That's really neat. That because I think people really do want to make a difference in the communities around them. Like if you're going to do something, it makes you feel good if you're making a difference for those around you, and it's a kind of a natural. I think it's a natural human thing, but definitely amongst nurses, I mean, we want to help. And so that's a really neat thing, because I wouldn't think that just putting an ice machine in a place would provide that kind of level of self-sufficiency, but
it really does. And the machine needs three things. The machine needs a water line and a water source. The machine needs to account for drainage. Some municipalities make you drain into the sewer line. Some allow a French drain. It all depends on the regulations. And it needs a power source. At first, we only had single phase power in this town. We had to upgrade our machine. Long story short, we had to put a converter in to convert to three-phase power. Most of the machines do benefit from three-phase power. And so those are the three things that when you're looking for a location, you sort of source where your utilities are located. Mm-hmm. So you have to find a location that drives enough traffic to the business, like those commercial parking lots and stuff. The machine only takes up about 300 square feet of space. So the machine itself only takes up 2 parking spaces. But you have to look at the surrounding areas, how traffic moves around, how people move around, and really where your utilities already lie, to see if there's locations that are possible. And that's really what took the most time, is finding an optimal location in that sense.
So are you renting space in some of these places, or is it something where you have to buy your own land, or how does that work?
You don't have to buy your own land. Most people do enter into a land lease with the owners of those commercial properties. I was very fortunate on both of our properties. So as you mentioned, we have 2 machines. One is in Silver Cliff, Colorado. The other one is in Colorado Springs. I was very fortunate to come across a corner property lot that was deemed sort of useless. It was 5,000 square feet. It was too small to build on. It had 20-foot setbacks. Nobody really could do anything with this one property that had an old house moved out of it. And then they had rezoned it commercial. And so the land had sat for 10, 12 years before in Colorado Springs, we presented the city with this idea. Mm-hmm. We were like, we'd like to put an ice machine on this. And at first the city kind of pushed back on us. Mm-hmm. And they're like, oh, no. And eventually I dug a little deeper into the zoning and the regulations. And since the ice machine is usually considered an accessory use building, that parking could be my primary and my machine could be secondary. And I feel like when the city learned that I had found a workaround, they didn't have to like the idea, but they did have to approve it.
Yeah. That's fascinating, though. So you have the property and you use it for parking.
I own both properties. Yeah. I own both properties that our machines sit down. So we don't owe anyone any land. We had purchased the first machine outright. We had purchased a portion of the second machine. And then we had gone to a local bank to get an SBA loan in 2020 to sort of finish off the project. Because it did end up being a little more than I had anticipated by purchasing the property for cash.
Yeah.
And so we went out, and then you navigate SBA loans, which are really, friendly. And we found a local banker. And again, I'm introducing a whole new concept to your local banker, to your town, to your planning commission, and all these people. It had to be explained over and over again. And Jeff used to say, we're a large Coke machine that sells ice, because it's really all we are. Mm-hmm. We're not an occupied structure of, beings or humans. And you try and explain to people how sanitary the machine is, This machine has an ice maker on top that drops into a bin, brings it forward, vents out to a bag, and the ice is never touched by human hands other than the person it gets delivered to. That is really sanitary in today's day and age. And like I said, November of 19, we installed our first machine. And then we all know what happened in the world.
Yes.
And so going forward, this was a selling feature that we could sell to people. Like this was an outdoor business. People don't have to bring their water jugs into the back of a grocery store to fill them up. Plus, the selling point is you offer it at a lower price point for people. So our business model is to do business in volume. So that's really the selling point.
Courtney, you mentioned that Ice House America machines, they've got like a small, medium, and large. Can you go into a little bit more detail with regards to the price of those machines and what it looks like?
I can. Prices have varied. Inflation has hit these machines. So I'm not quite sure post-inflation sort of how the machines vary. But it really depends on the amount of ice you need to sell. The small machine probably would run you, I'm assuming now, between 80 and maybe 100,000.
Okay.
The middle machine is probably somewhere in the middle. And I know the large machine is minimum about probably 150, maybe 175 with all the features. The company does allow you to pick and choose the features you want. Do you want to do reverse osmosis water? Do you want an ice maker that has 4 tubes or 6 tubes? So depending on the amount of sales you think you will do, how much ice you need to make and store, that kind of factors into the figure of the machine. If you want to deliver water like we do, then you're looking at adding on a water vendor onto the machine. And so the nice thing about it is it allows you to customize the machine that you want because they are all made for that individual. And that allows you, to make these choices. I knew in Colorado Springs that some machines you can put 2 ice makers on for really big selling communities. I knew in Colorado Springs that we were only going to get one bite at that apple with that town. So I basically chose the largest ice maker, which then factors into it. We also need, in colder climates, you need a special ice maker called a lower ambient, which allows you to make ice at lower temperatures. And because of that, obviously that adds on to the cost. And so it's kind of a snowball effect that you always start and look at the numbers, but like buying a car with all its features, by the time you're done, you usually just want to pay the money up front and have the nicer features. Yeah. And so we did that with our machine. So we decided that it was going to be a one-time investment and that we were going to make the biggest, best machine out there. Yeah. So prices the inflation has hit these parts of this machine. But with that, with inflation, it's kind of driven the business too as well. The ice manufacturers have actually reduced the size of their bag. They all participated in shrinkflation. A 10-pound bag is now a 7-pound bag. The 20-pound bag is now a 16-pound bag at the grocery store. If you notice that. With that, they've bumped the price a little bit. So they have all participated in that. And that's mostly because the rising price of petroleum has hit the cost of the bags. And so you are able to adjust for those things in your pricing. And like I said, since everybody is an independent owner, you get to choose what price you want to set that out, what the price of your market is. The machines are called twice the ice because when people come to you, they are literally getting twice the ice for the same price that they would get at the grocery store. And that's how you drive business to the machine, is by offering a better value for what they're paying.
Yeah, which makes sense. I mean, and if that's the only thing that you do, then you can afford to do that, whereas with the grocery stores and things like that, this is kind of a small part of their income. So they're going to try and jack up the prices to make up for other places where they don't make up that income.
Yeah. And, I think that ice is one of those commodities that people really miss when they don't have. So when you're throwing a party, if you walk up to a machine and the price of a 20-pound bag is $2.50, will you just say, well, I'm going to put a 5 in and grab 2 bags because I'd rather just not run out. And this is convenient and I'm here and I'm doing it. For businesses, local businesses really like the machine because they use our ice. When bars or restaurants lose their ice making capabilities, when demand is higher than they can, meet in the summer times. And they like it because ice is not something they're actually making a profit on. So the lowest price point that they can buy it at really helps them as a small business.
Mm-hmm. No, and it makes a lot of sense.
So it touches a lot of people's lives, ice, not just hunters and fishers and us putting it in our coolers, or people who labor outdoors in the summertime. Mm-hmm. There's all these entities that use it, but I mean, it touches a lot of people's lives that you don't always think about at the time.
Yeah. Well, and I want to get into something here that we haven't really talked about yet. It's return on investment. This is not something that's, a $5,000 or $10,000 investment. This is a pretty large investment into something. What does that return on investment look like? Is it, you mentioned there's a seasonal nature to where you're located, but what kind of cash flow is this producing for you guys?
So we were looking at, and we still are on target for this, 3 to 5 years for the full ROI, purchase of the machine, install, property.
Gotcha.
We run about 30, and this is conservatively, about 30% of our cost are our sales. So let's say, we did 100,000 of sales. That really only costs us 30,000. We're taking home about 70,000 in profit.
Okay.
And that's just round figures, say. But when we factor in our power, water, time, because we have to figure in our time at the machine and everything, and the cost of our bags, that's what we're looking at.
Yeah.
You're looking at a 30% cost to it.
Okay.
And so that's why your goal is to do business in volume. And one of the bonuses is that we sell water at our machine. Water is actually not taxable. So we don't pay sales tax on our water sales. And so by doing that alone, that really helps add to our bottom line and in a total on the machine.
That's really cool. I have not thought about that. I didn't know that water was not taxable.
Yeah, water is not taxable. So we sell our water at 25 cents a gallon to the consumer, where, Walmart and our grocery stores in our area are about 39 cents for a refill. And so because if you're willing to haul it yourself, you really do get that lower price point. And most people are willing to do that, which is the interesting thing.
Now let's talk about time, because obviously this does take time to put all of this together, to create the business plan and to have all these contacts with the local governments and things like that. So what does the time commitment look like for you and your husband?
So for working with the city, we really went to a company. We went to a planning company that really could help us push through the idea, because we needed landscaping plans and things that we just couldn't really do. We really had to turn to a bunch of professionals in our big town. In our small town, we were able to do it completely by ourselves with limited government. They didn't care. It was a handshake.
Yeah.
The guy showed up. They guesstimated how much we would owe for the business tax on install. They were like, does this sound fair? I mean, everything was just very easy and simple. But in the larger town, we did have to turn to somebody to help us, mostly because my time in the OR cannot be spent working with city officials and government on their time. So I did have to hire professionals for that. But weekly, I always think Jeff spends less time than he probably does. But that's typical of any relationship, right?
Yeah.
But he probably visits our machines each on average 2 to 3 times a week in the summertime and a little less in the winter time. He visits it more to keep an eye on it. You'd never want to leave. Obviously, people get concerned about vandalism and such, but these machines are built like Fort Knox. You would have to be, I don't want to give away secrets, but you got, again, the not so smart person thinks they create more damage trying to get into them than they actually ever do get into them. And usually what's in there, you want to visit your machine to take out the, money. But what we're seeing, which was interesting in our small town, we did about 80% cash, 20% credit cards. The machines do take credit cards.
Okay.
But what you see in your big town is kind of a reversal. We see a lot more credit card sales, which is good for the safety and security of the machine.
Yes.
But we see a lot more credit card sales in our big city than we see in our small city. So we're kind of seeing the reverse.
Yeah.
We're seeing the reverse in both towns. Yeah.
Well, I guess that, you have to consider payer mix when you're talking about markets and where you're looking to go. So yeah, It makes sense that, in the bigger cities, you're going to have a completely different payer mix.
Yeah. That actually surprised us a little bit. But then again, it's good for the safety of our machine. So, and nowadays you do have to take credit cards. I mean, you do have to eat that fee, but to allow the convenience of people to pay the way they want to pay. Yeah. And that's just it. You have to allow that.
Yeah. So what would
we
you
don't
say?
Take credit cards on our water, though. Our water is such a low price point. We don't take credit cards on the water. Water is cash.
Well, I guess it's a quarter. Yeah, it's a quarter for that. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, then, I guess, my next question is, what would you say the biggest challenge has been for you, getting this going? Has it been the red tape? Has it been the
red tape at first? Yes. The introducing a new concept at first. There was a lot of unknowns with the mechanics of the machine, and there really is a learning curve on learning it. And that's been mostly for Jeff, not me, but I know a little bit. I know just enough to be dangerous, but with him, I mean, he's had to learn the mechanics of the ice maker. Now, the great thing about Ice House America is you do have reach back to their technical support when the problem does arise. The problem is you get very anxious inside because if your machine isn't up and running, you're not selling, you're not making anything. And so the few summer months that you are up and running, there is a little bit of anxiety, like if a part goes this or that. And we've had to learn what sort of parts we need on hand, basically to get your machine up and running, delivering water or ice or making it. And there are a few essential parts. And that has been a big learning curve in the last 2 to 3 years. I also learned, I don't think having one machine is all that great, because when you need all those spare parts on hand, you really need to spread that out and that cost amongst many machines or more than one machine. And that's been really helpful. Once we got our second machine in, we were able kind of to expand our spare parts list and stuff and keep that in an organized fashion. So that's been really helpful. And I mean, it's just been in general, the business. We keep sort of reinvesting in the business. And at some point, we just need to settle down and enjoy it. I know you and I were talking a little bit. The reason why we had gone in this is so that we can have some revenue coming into our retirement years. Yeah. These machines should run for about 15 to 20 years, each ice maker, if they are well maintained. And that's greasing bearings and really just taking care of that machinery. And that's really what we want to ensure for the future, is that we have some sort of revenue coming into our either slow down or our retirement years, because I don't think we're going to retire like my parents' generation. Yeah. And we did need to plan something in advance while you're still working and earning income. We wanted to plan for the time when we might not be working. Yeah. And that's really what these machines have kind of allowed us to do.
Well, and having that extra income, it gives you some freedom to, like some flexibility with what you can do and how you work or things like that, and how your retirement looks, with regards to, that early on, are you going to do like a partial retirement or however these things come about. But yeah, I mean, I think it's great that you're actually looking ahead and this is what you're viewing as a significant portion of your retirement is having this business that doesn't require all of this time and maintenance and stuff. I mean, going to check on something a couple times a week's not too bad.
No, it hasn't been too bad. And like I said, the only other bonus is that the machine is considered machinery and it does qualify for a Section 179 depreciation. And so that has been a big bonus for me. Even though we did take an SBA loan to finish off that second machine, what I sort of when researched that it's okay to take a loan to buy an asset, not a liability. And by taking the loan to buy this asset that will run for us for about 20 years, that's okay. And like I said, it was a big debt that we pulled. But, you know, we were happy with that decision. And like I said, we had a wonderful local banker who really went to bat for us. When the bank said, what do you mean an ice machine in Colorado? It's cold. And the machines are loanable. They are loanable. And our banker said, if they're loanable in Texas, they're loanable in Colorado. And that's how we got our loan, is we were the first loan in Colorado. But we really had a really nice banker that worked for us.
That's really neat. That's
and that speaks to, it's been a cool experience.
It's relationships. You know, it's forming those relationships and those alliances that can help you to get those things done so that you can get your business off the ground.
Oh, absolutely. Our banker used to show up on site, and I was kind of embarrassed at one time because I actually didn't recognize him. Like, he had sunglasses on and I just didn't recognize him. And he used to show up on site every time. He wanted to know when the machine came in. And as he just kept following the project, and by the time we were open and ready, I mean, he was there ready to congratulate us. So it really did build a business with the bank that we choose to do business with now.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, you have provided, I think, so much value today and so much information that people can take away a lot from this conversation. But I do want to give people a chance to get a hold of you if they have additional questions. So how can they do that?
Okay, so our business email is SoCoIce, as in Southern Colorado. So SoCoIce719@gmail.com. They can email us anytime. Both of our machines are on Google Maps. That was certainly a challenge. So we're twice the ice, Colorado Springs, on Google Maps. Or they can email me or find me online. I've talked to a bunch of CRNAs who have been interested in this over the last few years. And I'm always happy to share with people, having gone through the struggle myself and the learning curve myself. I'm always happy to share with people what I sort of learned along the way. And, you know, it was a challenge, but I don't regret the last 5 years of making both the machines come to fruition.
No, it seems like it's been just a really fascinating journey. And I appreciate you sharing that with us today. And it's always good catching up with you anyway. This isn't the first time we've had a chance to chat about this kind of stuff. So it's always good to see you. And I really enjoy our conversations. So.
Well, thank you. It's the off season, as I call it. So
yeah. Oh, you got a little more time then.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. I've really appreciated the time.
All right. Well, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure to share it all.
A fun fact that Courtney shared with me after our recording is that Southwest Airlines actually has a machine at each one of their hubs across the country because they were having trouble getting enough ice for their planes. I mean, ice is big business in the U.S., and it's incredibly fragmented, which means there is opportunity. But just because there's demand doesn't mean that it's easy to get into. Colorado Springs, for example, has room for a ton of machines, but getting the land and the machines is expensive enough to really eat into your return on investment. But the smaller secondary and tertiary markets around the country may hold better metrics for you overall. With that being said, the thing that stuck out to me about Courtney is how she's being incredibly intentional about planning for her retirement. Replacing your working income with income in retirement is a process that takes time, work, and planning ahead. And she's already working on that. Are you? That's going to do it for the show today. Make sure you check out the show notes so that you can reach out to Courtney with any questions about her business. This is Bobby Jones signing off. Until next time, stay safe and take care of each other out there. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the Plan B CRNA podcast. If you haven't already subscribed and reviewed the show, I'd be honored if you took the extra time. It really helps to expand our reach and get the word out about the show. If you're a CRNA who is interested in sharing your story on our podcast, I'd love to have you. Please email me at bobby@oncallinvestments.com for more information. This episode was brought to you by On-Call Capital. They are dedicated to helping providers like you develop passive income and generational wealth through investments in the apartment and alternative investment spaces. Feel free to check out their website at www.oncallinvestments.com and subscribe to their free educational email series. You can find On-Call Capital on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can also check out our YouTube page, where you'll find all of the show episodes along with other educational videos. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.